You're aware of what's going on there, right?
To some degree.
All right. I mean, if all the people you mentioned, all of the folks who you indicted for kind of using Ted Cruz's language, left-wing radical ideas, how do you distinguish between a person whose motivation is to be left-wing Chinese sympathizer and people who just disagree with the fossil fuel industry, that climate change, in fact, is real and we have to do something about it? Can you explain to me?
Well, at the beginning of my oral testimony there, I made the distinction between whatever the intentions of various folks may be, they are objectively assisting China in its desire to compete with the United States.
The Hewlett Foundation?
Yes.
Seriously? Walter Hewlett, his foundation, you think is in bed with the Communist Party?
Well, that's not what I said, is it? I said that objectively they're aiding the Chinese communists, but I did not say that they themselves were communists.
Right, but what you're doing is denying them the ability to make their own judgment about what's good public policy for the benefit of this country by saying that they're, and this really is how I hear it, dupes of the Communist Party because what they're doing aligns, as you say, with the communists.
Well, they give a good deal of money, for instance, to the Energy Foundation China that the chairman has been discussing, which is run by a former Chinese communist official.
So by virtue, does China have any environmental problems?
It has grave environmental problems, yes.
So if there are some Chinese that want to deal with their environmental problems, and we agree that there are environmental problems, and we also know that climate change can't be solved by one country, and other countries start to do something about it, is that a problem for you?
Well, I have to say that I'm skeptical that former Chinese communist officials are interested in doing anything that would harm their country.
Who are some of the other names? I don't have your statement here that you said are in effect dupes, if I can translate what you're saying, of the Communist Party because their climate agenda, you say, is being funded by them.
I didn't talk about it being funded by them. And what I did explain I mean, they're very simple things. Massive U.S. government subsidies for products that use Chinese technology obviously is enhancing the Chinese economy.
Has the U.S. government, through its tax code, ever provided any incentives and tax preferences for the fossil fuel industry?
Yes, a great deal.
And you don't have a problem with that?
Well, I'm not an economist qualified to talk about the relative value of the subsidies, but I don't think that it's remotely deniable that we currently subsidize all sorts of green technology in which China is leading and therefore helping the Chinese. So
the fact that Senator Durbin here has solar panels, does that make him a communist sympathizer?
No, I don't think so, any more than my driving to this hearing today makes me a mass murderer or an accessory to mass murder.
You know, this is the issue I have. We've got a planet that's melting, all right? That's my view. The oil industry doesn't agree with that. They think everything's fine. And we went from a policy where it was all of the above to essentially a policy that everything below is where we're going to get our energy. And what I'm seeing in the arguments that you were making is you're trying to demean and disparage and discredit arguments by people who believe that we need a radically different policy. It does allow for the development of clean energy to reduce carbon emissions. That's what I'm hearing. And then one of the tools is to vilify folks who have that point of view, that they are dupes of the Communist Party that's trying to take us down. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I yield back.
Thank you. And I would note one of the reasons why the left and the Chinese communists resort to litigation is because their ideas are incredibly unpopular when the American people vote on them. So, for example, in the United States Senate, every Senate Democrat voted in favor of the California waiver that would effectively ban the internal combustion engine in 18 states across the country. Every Senate Democrat voted in favor of it, but you know what? The citizens aren't voting in favor of it. They're not campaigning. We don't see our Democrat colleagues saying we're going to ban the internal combustion engine. Even in bright blue states, even in Vermont and Rhode Island, the voters are not saying take away the car out of my driveway. And yet, Democrat office holders are trying to use government power to fight the Democrat wishes of their electorate. General Kobach, let's talk about the courts. The Climate Judiciary Project, backed by the Environmental Law Institute, Energy Foundation, and private donors connected to plaintiffs' law firms, has trained over 2,000 judges, many in key jurisdictions where these climate cases are pending. Is it appropriate for sitting judges to receive climate science, quote-unquote, education from advocacy groups like the Environmental Law Institute, groups that are directly tied to the plaintiffs in active litigation?
No, Mr. Chairman, I do not believe it is any more than it would be appropriate for a group of justices to go on an extensive training conference and be trained in how to dispute or defend the fossil fuel industry. When you have a group of litigants in a pitched legal battle in approximately more than 3 dozen cases, if we're talking about more than just the ones brought by cities and counties, the judges are there to be neutral. And the worst thing I fear going into any case on any issue is if I know that the judge is already dug in based on prior things the judge has done or said against me. So, I don't think it's appropriate for litigants to be training the judges in essentially what their experts are going to say in the trial.
Mr. Chairman, may I respond to this as well?
No, because we got limited time if someone else wants to get into it. General Kobach, isn't it true that... Actually, go ahead, Mr. Arkush.
Well, I just wanted to say that what Mr. Kobach is saying he opposes is exactly what's happening from the defense side as well. The Environmental Law Institute has multiple oil companies on its board, executives of oil companies, BP and Shell, and it has counsel representing them in court in important leadership positions.
So we may be breaking news here. Are you, on behalf of Public Citizen, calling for the Environmental Law Institute to stop training judges and indoctrinating judges?
What I'm saying is it doesn't make any sense to say that they're indoctrinating judges as some sort of leftist plot.
Okay, let's be clear. I'm calling for them to stop training judges because I think they are indoctrinating them. It's interesting you said that, but you weren't willing to go to the natural next step of, therefore, it should stop.
I don't know that much about it, but I do know that BP and Shell are on the board.
Mr. Arkush, if you believed what you were saying, you would be willing to call for it to stop. You're not, and that suggests you know damn well what it is they're training the judges, and it's indoctrination, and you don't want it to stop because you want the judges to be biased and rule in favor of these crackpot theories. Now, General Kobach,
BP and Shell are on the board of an organization.
Isn't it true?
Judges against them.
Mr. Arkush, your time is done.
Thank you.
Isn't it true that these programs, often hosted in conjunction with the Federal Judicial Center or the National Judicial College, can obscure ethics disclosure requirements because they fall under judicial exemption categories? Yeah,
I think, Chairman, you're correct. There are definite ethical problems, and in addition to the overarching sort of federal model of ethics, you also have additional state ethical rules that may be violated as well. But at the end of the day, it's judicial neutrality that is the biggest ethical constraint on our entire Article III courts and state courts, and that is the biggest problem I see going into any case.
It's also been reported that the Chief Justice of the Hawaii Supreme Court participated in these sessions at the same time that his court was reviewing one of these climate lawsuits. So active litigation, and yet happily being indoctrinated by interested parties in an ex parte setting where the opposing counsel had no opportunity to refute the indoctrination. Mr. Walter, the Climate Judiciary Project tells judges that climate lawsuits are a, quote, unique opportunity for accountability. Would you call that education, or would you call that political indoctrination disguised as training?
Accountability is the standard term used by political activists to try to say we want to hurt those folks that we're opposed to.
Do you believe Congress should investigate whether these trainings are undermining the impartiality of the judiciary?
Absolutely, Senator.
Thank you. Senator Whitehouse.
Well, the funny thing about this conversation is that time did not begin yesterday. And for years, public advocates